Home prices in California have slipped about 2.1% over the past 12 months, while the national market has barely moved. But in several cities on today's list, the drop isn't a mild correction, it's a full-blown slide of 10 to 24% from the 2022 peak. This video will take you through 10 places retirees need to approach with extreme caution, along with 3 critical questions you must ask yourself before you sign anything. Because one rushed decision can turn a peaceful retirement dream into a 6-figure regret. And worse yet, even if you dodge the foreclosure storm, you could still end up in a neighborhood where the HOA fines you simply because your exterior paint isn't the approved shade of beige. Number 10, Salinas. If you drive into Salinas on a cool morning, the first thing you notice isn't the price of a house. It's the endless carpet of green fields, the rows of lettuce and strawberries shimmering under that soft coastal fog. For a lot of retirees, this valley looks almost like a promise. Quiet air, mild weather, and the feeling of stepping into the good California that people dream about but rarely find anymore. But beauty doesn't mean bargain. According to the National Association of Realtors, Salinas sits among the most expensive housing markets in the entire United States, listed right alongside San Diego, Los Angeles, and Oxnard. Zillow puts the typical home price above $730,000, and while prices have slipped about 1% over the past 12 months, the deeper story is not the short-term movement. It's the mismatch between what a home costs here and what the local economy can realistically support. Salinas is powered almost entirely by agriculture. The farms are beautiful, yes, but farm wages don't chase million-dollar mortgages. And that mismatch creates a quiet tension. High home prices floating on top of an economy that for decades has been stable but not wealthy. If you're retired and living on a fixed income, this tension matters more than the sticker price because your true net value depends on what the home can hold. Not just today, but 10, 20 years from now. And now, a new layer of risk is settling over the valley. FEMA recently updated the flood risk maps for the Salinas River and its branching creeks. Entire pockets of the valley floor, areas that looked perfectly safe during the dry summer months, are now reclassified into higher risk zones. That means many homeowners who bought here years ago are suddenly discovering they may need flood insurance. And for retirees, that's not a small footnote. Flood coverage can add hundreds, sometimes thousands, of dollars a year to your expenses. On a fixed retirement income, that's not weather you can just ride out. Liquidity is another issue. The market isn't collapsing, but it's softening. If you ever need to sell quickly, whether for health, family, or the rising cost of living, you won't have the leverage you might expect in such an expensive market. You may have a high-value home on paper, yet struggle to convert that into real, usable retirement security when you need it most. And that's just the story of flooding in a quiet agricultural valley. The next city faces its own slide in home values, but this time the threat comes with desert heat and electric bills that refuse to cool down. Number 9, Riverside. If you drive through Riverside at sunset, everything looks exactly like the retirement fantasy brochures. Quiet cul-de-sacs, one-story homes with tidy lawns, a little extra space between neighbors. It's the kind of place people choose when they want to stay close to Los Angeles without paying Los Angeles prices. At first glance, it feels stable, comfortable, predictable, almost insulated from the chaos on the coast. But stability can be misleading. According to Zillow, the typical Riverside home now sits around $638,000, down just over 3% year over year. It's not a crash. Not even close, but it's a noticeable softening after the explosive boom of 2020 through 2022. And underneath that soft landing is a deeper structural problem, one that retirees, especially those living on fixed income, can't afford to ignore. Riverside isn't just a suburb, it's the beating heart of the Inland Empire's logistics machine. Warehouses stretch into the horizon like steel-roofed oceans. Tens of thousands of jobs here depend on trucking, warehousing, fulfillment centers, and the constant pulse of consumer spending. When trade slows, when e-commerce cools, when shipping volumes dip even a little, this region feels it like a cold wind through a thin jacket. And in 2025, that wind is already blowing. The moment distribution centers scale back shifts or freeze hiring, the buyer pool shrinks. Not dramatically, not overnight, but enough to pull demand down in a market where so many households rely on the same economic engine. Retirees might not work in logistics, but they live next to people who do. And a neighborhood's value is tied to the strength of the paychecks around it. Then there are the climate costs. Riverside is hot, real punishing inland heat that pushes air conditioning units to their limits for months at a time. And with hotter summers come higher power bills. Add nearby wildfire-prone hillsides, and insurance premiums follow the temperature upward. For someone on a fixed monthly budget, that's not just inconvenient, it's destabilizing. The housing market here won't implode, but another 5 to 10% decline from the peak is entirely possible, even conservative. Yet property taxes won't automatically adjust downward. Many retirees find themselves paying yesterday's tax bill on tomorrow's lower home value, and that imbalance turns a reasonably priced retirement town into a slow financial leak. Liquidity becomes another quiet risk. If you ever need to sell quickly, the softening market means fewer bidding wars and longer waiting periods. In a region tied so tightly to the health of supply chains, your retirement nest egg is suddenly riding shotgun with the volatility of global trade. And if you think Riverside's story is just about logistics and heat, the next city proves that when crime perception and public safety fall out of sync, home values can drop far faster than anyone expects. Number 8, Stockton. Stockton greets you with a strange kind of promise. On the quiet streets just outside the city center, under 450K signs hang from porches like invitations. For anyone escaping the Bay Area's impossible prices, it looks almost too good to be true. A 3-bedroom home at roughly $427,000, down about 3.8% over the past year, feels like stumbling onto a forgotten bargain shelf. But Stockton has always been a city where every discount comes with a question mark. When you look closer, that question mark becomes a warning. Buyers aren't pushing prices down for sport. They're demanding a discount to offset the city's long reputation for crime, uneven social services, and school districts that make young families hesitate. Even though crime has shown some improvement in 2024, Stockton still carries the high-risk label in statewide comparisons. And labels like that tend to stick longer than numbers do. For retirees, the risk isn't just about safety, it's about liquidity, the quiet, often overlooked threat. A home is supposed to be a source of stability, maybe even a financial cushion. But in a market where younger families are avoiding entire zip codes, selling becomes a negotiation of how much you're willing to lose. You might find a buyer eventually, but only after trimming $10,000, $20,000, sometimes $30,000 just to get someone to look twice. And the hidden costs pile up. Insurance premiums keep rising across California, and in cities with elevated risk profiles, they can climb even faster. Add the cost of security systems, reinforced doors, gated driveways, cameras. Suddenly, the affordable home doesn't feel so affordable. What retirees fear most isn't the crime itself. It's the sense of being financially cornered in a place that's harder to leave than it was to enter. Yet Stockton's reality is not a tragedy. It's a cautionary tale, a reminder that price alone doesn't tell you whether a city is moving up or silently sinking, that a home listed for $430,000 can cost you far more than its sticker price. And as we leave Stockton's quiet suburbs behind, another story waits just up the highway. Because in Sacramento, the state capital once fueled by remote work arrivals, the tide is pulling in a different direction. The work-from-home boom that once made its suburbs glow is now fading, leaving behind neighborhoods whose values are slipping for a completely different reason. The next city on our list shows how a market can lose momentum not because it's unsafe, but because people simply stopped staying. Number 7. Sacramento. Sacramento doesn't announce its troubles loudly. At first glance, the city still looks like the dream it became during the pandemic. Leafy suburbs, freshly painted homes, quiet cul-de-sacs that feel perfect for retirees wanting to live close to children working in state agencies. A typical house sits around $472,000 now, barely 3.3% lower than a year ago. The drop is small, almost gentle, but behind the calm streets, there's a market quietly sobering up from a very particular kind of high, the remote work rush. Back in 2020 through 2022, Sacramento became the great escape route for people priced out of San Francisco and San Jose. Remote work meant they could keep their Bay Area salaries while enjoying twice the space and half the stress. They came in droves. Entire neighborhoods saw bidding wars over homes that had sat untouched for months. Values shot upward and sellers suddenly felt invincible. Sacramento became a magnet not because it changed, but because the world around it did. Then the world changed again. Interest rates climbed, companies pulled workers back into offices, and the remote work glow, once so bright it made buyers ignore every flaw, dimmed almost overnight. Demand didn't collapse, but it cooled enough for the market to exhale. Prices slipped from their pandemic peak, and while the decline looks modest, its meaning is sharper than the numbers suggest. Sacramento is no longer the it city of California's housing migration story. For retirees, the danger lies in timing. Those who bought at the 2022-2023 peak are sitting on paper losses now. And for older buyers stepping into the market today, the risk is simple: buying before the market finds its real bottom. A few percentage points might not sound catastrophic, but for someone counting on fixed income stability, those few points can mean years of financial tension. And the costs don't stop at the sale price. Property taxes in the capital region haven't softened. Neither have energy bills, groceries, or healthcare services. Sacramento feels affordable compared to the Bay Area, but internally it carries the weight of a capital city, where every essential tends to cost just a bit more than expected. Still, Sacramento's story isn't about collapse. It's about momentum lost. A city that rose because people fled somewhere else, and now drifts because that exodus has slowed to a trickle. And just down the map, a different challenge is taking shape. Because if Sacramento represents the hangover of remote work migration, the next city tells a story carved by wildfire seasons, insurance withdrawals, and neighborhoods living under the shadow of smoke. Pressures that can push home prices downward in a way no interest rate ever could. Number 6. Santa Rosa. Santa Rosa is the kind of place retirees dream about long before they ever pack a suitcase. Rolling vineyards that turn gold at sunset, wooden homes tucked along quiet hills, and that signature wine country calm you can almost feel just by looking at a postcard. For many, this is the California fantasy: beauty without the chaos, peace without the isolation. But beneath the soft light and Chardonnay charm is a risk that has nothing to do with curb appeal, and everything to do with geography. Santa Rosa sits inside one of California's most notorious wildfire corridors, a region shaped again and again by wind-driven flames that erased entire neighborhoods in past decades. Today, the scars may be less visible, but they still dictate the rules of the housing market. Home prices in several parts of Santa Rosa have slipped roughly 3.7 to 4.5% over the past 12 months. A mild decline on paper. Nothing alarming, nothing dramatic. But those numbers are only the surface-level story. The deeper pressure comes from something far more unforgiving: the wildfire insurance crisis spreading through California. Over the past few years, major insurance companies have quietly pulled out of high-risk wildfire zones. Others stayed but began raising premiums at double-digit rates or refusing to renew long-standing policies. Tens of thousands of households across the state, and a significant share right here in Sonoma County, found themselves pushed into the FAIR Plan, the insurance of last resort, known for its limited coverage and painfully high cost. For retirees, this is where the real danger lies. The market can handle a 4% dip in value, but a sudden $1,500 to $4,000 a year added to the cost of simply owning a home? That is the kind of burden that can quietly break a retirement budget. You don't feel it all at once. You feel it season by season, renewal by renewal, as premiums rise and coverage shrinks. And when insurance becomes unpredictable, selling a home becomes harder. Many buyers run the numbers and realize the insurance bill alone can destabilize their long-term finances. Sellers, especially older homeowners on fixed incomes, may end up having to drop their asking price just to keep someone interested, effectively paying the price for risks they cannot control. So Santa Rosa's story isn't about collapse. It's about pressure. Pressure from fire seasons that grow longer each year. Pressure from insurance markets rewriting the rules. Pressure that slowly turns a dream retirement destination into a place where staying may cost far more than anyone planned. And if Santa Rosa shows how nature can push a market downward, the next city proves that even the most expensive coastal paradise isn't immune. Because in San Diego, the shock isn't wildfire. It's the price tag itself, finally starting to slip. Number 5. San Diego. There are few places in America that sell a retirement fantasy as effortlessly as San Diego. Warm breezes, gentle surf, mornings that smell like salt water and evenings washed in soft orange light. For decades, this city has been the poster child of coastal perfection, a place where retirees imagine long walks along the cliffs of La Jolla or lazy afternoons near Mission Bay. The beauty hasn't changed. The weather hasn't changed. But the housing market, that's where the calm surface hides a slow and steady slide. Today, according to Zillow, a typical San Diego home hovers near $980,000. Still breathtakingly high, still in the league of America's most expensive markets. But what catches experts' attention isn't the level, it's the direction. Prices have slipped about 4.2% over the past 12 months. And Redfin's data tells the same story. Median sale prices for the county peaked around $950,000 in mid-2024 before sliding down toward $880,000 by year's end. It's not a crash. It's a graceful, almost polite descent. But for those who bought at the top, even a polite decline hurts. San Diego's strength has always been its demand. Military jobs, biotech, tourism, and endless sunshine keep people coming. Yet even strong demand can't fight gravity forever. When interest rates rise and affordability collapses, even paradise is forced to readjust. That's what we're seeing now. A market still expensive, still desirable, but undeniably drifting away from its peak. For retirees, this creates a very specific risk, one that looks harmless until you run the numbers. High prices combined with high rates mean buying here requires more capital up front. But the safety margin, the cushion that protects your investment, shrinks quickly when the market only needs to fall another 3 or 4% to wipe out equity. It's the worst kind of imbalance, paying the most while being protected the least. And coastal living comes with its own set of hidden expenses. Insurance premiums along the Southern California shoreline have climbed sharply. Salt air speeds up exterior wear. Moisture breeds mold. Roofing, siding, windows, everything demands more frequent maintenance, and none of it is cheap. For retirees living on fixed incomes, these are not minor inconveniences. They are long-term structural pressures. San Diego hasn't lost its beauty. It hasn't lost its charm. But its housing market is showing the first real signs of strain after years of relentless growth. And once a market starts slipping from the peak, the next few chapters tend to unfold slowly, quietly, but undeniably downward. Because if even San Diego, the perfect city can wobble, what happens in places where prices surged for reasons far less stable? The answer lies across the bay in communities where the entire pandemic boom has already evaporated. Number 4, Hayward. Hayward has always lived in the shadows of its famous neighbors. To the north sits Oakland with its long history and big city identity. To the south lies Silicon Valley, the global symbol of innovation and sky-high salaries. And right in the middle is Hayward, a city that many retirees once saw as a practical landing spot. Close enough to the Bay Area's opportunities, far enough to avoid its worst prices. It felt like the safe middle ground, the place where value made sense. At least that was the hope. During the pandemic boom from 2020 through 2022, Hayward experienced the same fever that swept across the entire Bay Area. People rushed out of San Francisco's dense neighborhoods, hungry for more space, more quiet, and slightly more affordable homes. Prices here surged, competition grew, and for a brief moment, Hayward looked like one of the biggest winners of the Great Migration. Then the tide shifted. Interest rates rose, tech hiring cooled, and the influx of out-of-town buyers, those who had fueled Hayward's jump, slowed dramatically. According to Wolf Street's analysis of Zillow's ZHVI, home prices for mid-tier single-family houses are now down roughly 11% from their August 2022 peak and about 8% lower than a year ago. A sizable portion of the pandemic surge has been erased. Suddenly, the safe middle ground doesn't feel so safe. For retirees, the real risk isn't just the decline, it's the position Hayward occupies in the hierarchy of California real estate. Unlike iconic markets such as San Francisco or San Jose, Hayward doesn't have a powerful brand to hold buyers' attention during downturns. When the market softens, many buyers simply trade up to more recognizable cities if prices are flattening across the board. That leaves Hayward exposed to longer selling times and deeper price cuts. There's also a psychological trap that many older homeowners fall into, the belief that they can always sell later to the next wave of young tech workers. But that assumes the tech workforce stays anchored in the Bay Area. Remote work trends, job migration to cheaper states, and ongoing departures from California all call that assumption into question. A retiree who buys with the expectation of easy resale may find that the pool of future buyers is smaller and more price-sensitive than expected. Hayward hasn't collapsed. It's still livable, still well-located, still part of the Bay Area ecosystem. But it is undeniably caught between two forces bigger than itself: the falling momentum of Oakland to the north and the shifting identity of Silicon Valley to the south. And squeezed between these two bubbles, its home values have started slipping faster than many imagined. And if Hayward seems bad, the next city tells a harsher story. Once a symbol of the California dream, now facing falling list prices, wildfire threats, and an insurance shock unlike anything the state has seen before. Number 3, Los Angeles. Los Angeles has always sold a dream. Morning light dripping over the Pacific, palm trees shaking gently in the breeze, hillside homes with glass, walls that glow gold at sunset. For decades, people pictured retirement here as the final reward after a life of hard work. A place where you wake up to ocean air instead of alarm clocks. A city where you finally slow down. But 2025 has revealed the part of the story no one wants on a postcard. The typical home in Los Angeles now costs around $933,000. That number still looks intimidating, yet the market quietly slipped almost 3% over the past year. Local analysts say sellers are lowering expectations because high interest rates continue to choke demand. Listings sit longer, open houses are emptier, and agents whisper the same phrase again and again: we need to adjust the price. At the same time, something far bigger is reshaping the map of the city and the psychology of its homeowners. Wildfire seasons in the Eaton and Palisades areas forced more than $40 billion worth of real estate into high-risk zones. Entire neighborhoods that once bragged about ocean views now live under an orange haze for weeks at a time. For many retirees, the shock didn't come from the flames, but from the letters arriving afterward. Non-renewal notices from major insurance companies. Some households suddenly found their long-standing policies canceled. Others were pushed into the state's expensive FAIR plan. And for those who kept their private insurance, annual premiums jumped 20% or more. It creates an uncomfortable reality for anyone planning to spend their retirement savings here. You may have spent decades dreaming of LA only to find out that your insurance bill now eats the same money you save for travel, family, or medical care. And even if you decide to sell and move to a cheaper state, buyers are now wary. They ask about fire zones. They ask about premiums. They ask about evacuation routes. Every question adds friction, and every ounce of hesitation pushes the selling price a little lower. This is the side of Los Angeles that no real estate brochure highlights. A beautiful city balancing on the edge of natural risk and financial strain, a place where the dream is still alive but many are discovering it comes with conditions written in fine print. And if Los Angeles represents the perfect storm of wildfires and insurance turmoil, the next city is the one the entire country is watching. A once untouchable market that has already slipped 16% from its peak. Number 2, San Francisco. San Francisco used to feel like the center of gravity, a city where the hills glimmered in the morning, where narrow streets climbed toward pastel homes stacked tightly together, and where the view of the bay felt like an open invitation to reinvention. For years, people believed this was where bold careers peaked and early retirements began. A place where you cashed in your stock options, bought a home on a quiet slope, and finally breathed. But the last few years have rewritten that script. According to Wolf Street, based on the Zillow Home Value Index, the median single-family home in San Francisco has fallen roughly 16% from its May 2022 peak, dragging prices back to where they were in 2018. Another report shows that median listing prices are down nearly 11% compared to last year. That kind of decline doesn't happen because sellers want to be generous. It happens because the market forces their hand. Homes linger on the market longer. Buyers hesitate. Expectations collide with reality. Zooming out reveals a pattern across California. Case-Shiller data confirms that many cities in the state slipped 5 to 10% from their 2022 highs. But San Francisco sits in a deeper trough, losing ground faster and more dramatically than its neighbors. A decade of meteoric gains, from 2012 through the pandemic frenzy, has largely been erased. And it isn't only numbers that worry people planning for retirement. The city's social fabric has been under strain. Persistent concerns about homelessness, open-air drug activity, and uneven public services have pushed many middle-class residents to reconsider whether they want to commit their life savings here. For retirees, that hesitation becomes even sharper. Even after the drop, San Francisco remains one of the most expensive markets in the United States. That means stepping into a home that demands both a massive upfront investment and a high tolerance for price swings. There's also the migration trend. Every year since the pandemic, more residents have chosen to move outward, to suburbs, exurbs, or entirely out of the state. If that pattern continues, the city's recovery may flatten out. Some experts already suggest that a period of sideways movement or even additional decline is entirely possible. For anyone imagining their final chapter in San Francisco, the question becomes uncomfortable. Are you buying a slice of the city's legacy or tying your savings to a market still searching for its new identity? Because if San Francisco is the story of a former superstar slipping out of the spotlight, then the final city on this list is where the fall is steeper still, down more than 24% from the peak, wiping out the entire run-up of the COVID boom. Number 1. Oakland. Across the bay, Oakland once felt like the smartest workaround in Northern California. You could look toward San Francisco's skyline, feel close to opportunity, and still pay a fraction of the price. For many people planning retirement in the early 2020s, the equation seemed unbeatable. More space, more sun, more house for the money. It was the escape valve for those who wanted the Bay Area lifestyle without the Bay Area price tag. Then the tide turned. During the pandemic surge of 2020 to 2022, prices in Oakland soared, riding the same tidal wave that lifted every city touched by remote work migration. But once mortgage rates spiked and demand cooled, the market snapped back. According to Wolf Street, based on Zillow's Home Value Index, the median single-family home in Oakland has now dropped roughly 24% from its May 2022 peak. That plunge doesn't just soften the spike, it erases the entire COVID-era run-up, dragging prices back to levels last seen around 2018. And the slide isn't over. Zillow notes that typical home values are down more than 10% just in the past 12 months. Local reports echo the same theme. Neighborhoods across Oakland are seeing appraisals revised downward, sometimes multiple times in a single year, as confidence in the market weakens. Homes that once sparked bidding wars now sit longer, waiting for buyers who increasingly want assurances the price won't fall further. But numbers only tell part of the story. Oakland has faced a difficult few years. Headlines about crime, declining retail corridors, and businesses relocating have made many cautious about long-term investment. For retirees who often prioritize stability over speculation, these signals weigh heavily. Even at today's lower prices, Oakland requires a leap of faith, one that assumes the city will regain momentum and restore its value base. The risks are real. Someone buying in cash today might still watch their home lose value if the outward migration trend continues. Property taxes remain high. Much of the city's housing stock is older, meaning expensive repairs can appear without warning. Insurance premiums have risen in many zip codes, and the cost of maintaining an older home can quickly erode a fixed retirement budget. And the biggest uncertainty isn't the 24% drop, it's what happens next. Markets rarely fall this far without overshooting. If buyer confidence remains shaky, Oakland could drift sideways or slip further before stabilizing. For anyone imagining Oakland as the affordable Bay Area alternative, the question becomes unavoidable. Is this a temporary correction or a reset that redraws the map of where people want to retire? At the end of this journey through California's falling markets, three hard truths stand out for anyone planning to retire here. First, never judge a home by today's price tag alone. Always ask where the city sits compared with its 2022 or 2024 peak. Second, remember that a cheap house isn't cheap once you factor in insurance, property taxes, HOA fees, and the rising cost of climate risk. And finally, ask every agent the question most buyers avoid. If I need to sell within 3 months, how much would I realistically have to cut? Now, a question for you. If you had to choose one of these 10 cities to retire in, which would it be? Or would you leave California altogether? Share your own nightmare city in the comments. Hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next guide.